There were several pieces of legislation that are pending, and some of those are controversial. But during the markup process, they decided to go ahead and include these as a contingency that would be needed to fund if passed. And so, for example, one of those was the Marijuana Control Act, which would add about $3.6 million to the budget. Another one is for SB 3. The estimate is that will take 48 full-time equivalent employees to handle the required changes in law should SB 3, the permit to purchase, move forward. If, of course, these bills do not pass, then that contingency money will go back into the general fund. So we saw a couple pieces of legislation that, if passed, are going to add significant full-time employees, which means an additional fund year after year. It's just not a one-time expense. Another area we saw that in was for the body-worn camera. The hardware is one aspect of the cost, but the real cost to body-worn cameras for law enforcement officers comes in who's going to be reviewing that material, how it will be stored. And I believe there was an additional 50 FTEs, 50 full-time people that will be needed and necessary to administer that program. And two other things that have been very controversial in the community in large were funding for direct service personnel. Some people will refer to that as the McNesby Act. A few years ago, the legislature realized that there was a market rate disparity between what providers should be receiving and what the state was able to pay. And there were efforts and promises to make that whole when they could. This was the year because everybody seemed to know that the budget was in a positive position. There was more money than we've had in quite a while. And so the promise was kept, and actually the McNesby funds will be going up. The total contribution will be $18 million this year, which means they will be brought to 85% of the market rate. A very similar thing was done for the purchase of care, also raising up for those child care providers that are in the purchase of care program to also receive an increase closer to the current market rate. So two significant investments that really impact many families in Delaware. And so now we'll begin the process of doing grant and aid. That's also a responsibility of the Joint Finance Committee. And once again, we're going to try and hold firm to the proposed $55 million that was authorized or proposed by the governor. And we'll be trying to hold fast to that too, making sure that we can send as much money over for capital improvements for bond committee to have and put in that sustainability fund. We're really focusing on just not next year's budget, but the future budgets and the financial stability of Delaware.